A storm rolled across the Heartland sky, but it wasn't the thunder that made Amy Fleming stop in her tracks. It was the feeling cold, sharp, and wrong. As she placed her hand on the neck of the new horse she'd taken in earlier that morning, the animal shivered as if it sensed something far darker approaching the ranch. Amy had no idea that this horse carried the shadow of someone dangerous, someone who was coming for revenge. And before the night was over, that danger would find her. The day began quietly at Heartland. The kind of morning Amy usually loved: cool air, soft sunlight, and the sound of horses waking up across the ranch. But today felt different. As Amy stepped outside, Jack waved her over with a confused look on his face. A trailer she didn't recognize sat near the barn, its engine still warm, but no driver in sight. It was as if someone had dropped off a delivery and vanished into thin air. Inside the trailer stood a tall, nervous horse with dark eyes that refused to settle on anything for more than a second. Amy could see the tension in every muscle. She opened the trailer door slowly, speaking in a calm voice, hoping to ease its fear. But the horse jerked backward, slamming its hooves against the metal floor, sending a sharp echo through the open yard. Something wasn't right. There was no note, no paperwork, not even a name written on the halter. Amy glanced around the ranch, nothing but open fields and the fading dust of where the trailer must have driven off. Whoever left the horse behind clearly didn't want to be found, and that alone made Amy uneasy. Still, she couldn't ignore the animal trembling before her. It needed help, maybe more than any horse she had seen in a long time. She reached out her hand, letting the horse smell her fingers. It hesitated, eyes wide with fear, then finally allowed her to take the lead rope as she guided the horse out of the trailer. Its legs shook slightly, like each step carried the weight of a memory it couldn't escape. Amy felt a deep sadness in the way it moved, almost like it had been running from something or someone. Jack watched from a distance, his expression serious. "You sure about this, Amy?" he asked quietly. "Stray horses don't just show up without a reason." Amy nodded, though doubt tugged at her. "I'll figure out what's going on. Whatever this horse has been through, it deserves a chance." But even as she said the words, a strange feeling settled in her chest, instinct she couldn't shake. This horse was more than a rescue. It was a warning, and whoever abandoned it wasn't done with it yet. Amy didn't know it. But bringing this horse onto Heartland would pull her straight into someone else's dangerous past. A past that was about to catch up to her. The first sign that something was wrong came just after sunset. Heartland usually settled into a soft stillness at night, but tonight the air felt restless. Amy had finished feeding the horses when she heard a sharp crash from the far end of the barn. It wasn't the sound of a horse kicking a stall. It was heavier, like wood splitting under pressure. She rushed toward the noise, her footsteps echoing across the dimly lit hallway. When she reached the stall of the new horse, her breath caught. The animal was trembling, its eyes wide with terror as it stared toward the dark window. The wooden beam beside the stall door had been snapped clean through, as if the horse had thrown its full weight at it. But Amy knew something else instantly. This level of panic didn't come from an empty night. Something had scared it. She stepped inside carefully, whispering soothing words, but the horse kept glancing toward the shadows outside, ears pinned back. Amy followed its gaze, staring out into the open yard. The wind pushed the grass in slow waves, but nothing looked unusual. No movement. No lights. No strangers. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there. Later, when the ranch finally quieted down, Jack walked the fence line as he often did before bed. But tonight, he found something that made his stomach tighten. A section of the fence near the east field had been cut. Not broken, not chewed by animals. Cut clean through. Jack's boots crunched on the dirt as he crouched to look closer. The cut was fresh. Whoever had done it had stood right where he was kneeling now. Watching, waiting, maybe even planning to walk onto the property. When he told Amy, she felt that same cold feeling from earlier return. It almost wrapped around her shoulders like a warning. Could someone be trying to get close to the horse? Or was this a threat aimed at her? The new horse grew more unsettled each hour. By midnight, Amy found it pacing in circles, sweat shining across its coat. It stopped only when she touched its neck. As her hand rested there, the horse let out a low, painful breath that felt almost human-like, a cry from someone who had suffered too long. Amy leaned against the stall door. The horse wasn't just scared of the dark, it was scared of being found. And somewhere out in that darkness, a pair of eyes might already be watching her. The danger wasn't coming. It was already here, hiding in the shadows of Heartland. By the next morning, Heartland felt different, like the ranch itself was holding its breath. Amy didn't sleep much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the image of the cut fence and the horse's terrified stare. She tried shaking the thoughts away as she stepped into the barn, but a new uneasiness lingered in the air. While brushing the horse, Amy noticed something she hadn't seen before. A faint symbol burned into the leather of the animal's halter. It was small and worn, almost invisible unless the light hit it just right. A circle with a jagged line through it. She touched it gently, and the horse flinched. Someone had marked this animal, and not with care. Before she could study it further, Jack called her outside. His voice was low and tight. "There's something you should see." Amy followed him to the end of the driveway where the gravel met the main road. Footprints. Deep ones. Fresh ones. A single set leading directly toward the ranch, and then back into the trees. The prints were heavier than normal, spaced wide apart, someone tall, someone moving with purpose, someone who had no reason to be here. Jack's jaw tightened. "This wasn't a lost hiker," he said quietly. Amy's heart dropped. She looked toward the tree line, but the forest only stared back in silence. Later that afternoon, she caught movement near the ridge. Just a flicker at first, like a shadow sliding between the brush. She narrowed her eyes, focusing. There, standing half-hidden behind a cluster of dark pines, was a figure dressed in a long coat, unmoving, watching the ranch with a stillness that felt unnatural. Amy froze. The stranger didn't step forward, didn't turn away, only stood there, as if keeping track of every moment, every person, every horse. And though she couldn't see his face, she felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. He wasn't here by accident. He was here for the horse. When she blinked, the figure vanished as silently as it had appeared, swallowed by the trees. No footsteps, no sound. Only the echo of his presence remained. Later that evening, Amy searched online for the symbol on the halter. After scrolling through ranch records and rescue databases, she found it connected to a small group known for illegal horse trading. A group known for violence when anyone stood in their way. A chill ran through her. The horse wasn't abandoned. It was hidden. Hidden from a man who wanted it backhand, who was now standing somewhere. In the shadows of Heartland, Amy had taken in a frightened animal. But she hadn't known the truth. The horse wasn't running from danger. It had led danger straight to her door. That night, the wind felt sharper than usual, scraping across the ranch like a warning carried through the dark. Amy tried to keep herself busy, cleaning tack, checking stalls, anything to quiet the uneasy feeling twisting in her stomach. But danger doesn't fade just because you try to ignore it. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it moves closer. She was locking up the barn when she heard its soft, crunching footsteps on gravel, slow, careful, not the sound of a horse, not the light step of a ranch hand. These were heavy, deliberate footsteps, the kind someone makes when they don't want to be heard but can't hide their weight. Amy froze. Her hands still on the lock, the footsteps stopped. Her heart pounded hard enough to echo in her ears. She turned slowly, scanning the yard. The porch lights cast long shadows across the dirt, stretching out like dark fingers. Something moved at the edge of the glow. Not an animal. A man. He stood halfway hidden behind the old water tank. Just close enough that she could see the long coat and dark boots, but too far to catch his face. He didn't rush toward her. He didn't speak. He simply stood there, watching. Amy's breath hitched. The symbol on the horse's halter burned in her mind, and she felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Can I help you?" she called out. Her voice steady, even though her hands trembled. No answer. The stranger took one slow step forward. Amy stepped back, instinct screaming that this man wasn't lost. He wasn't confused. He wasn't harmless. Before she could decide whether to run or stand her ground, the stranger's voice cut through the air, low, rough, and cold. "You have something that belongs to me." Every muscle in Amy's body tightened. He wasn't talking about a tool or a piece of equipment. He meant the horse. The terrified animal that arrived on her doorstep without explanation. The horse with the burned symbol. The horse that had been running. Amy swallowed hard. That horse is scared. Hurt. If it came from you, the man stepped further into the light. Just enough to reveal the hard lines of his face and the anger burning in his eyes. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he said. "Give the horse back, and this ends clean." Amy didn't move. She couldn't. Something inside her told her this was no simple claim. This man wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to take what he wanted no matter who stood in his way. A gate creaked somewhere behind them, breaking the moment. The stranger jerked his head toward the noise, then stepped backward into the shadows. But before disappearing, he spoke one last time. "You've got until tomorrow. After that, I won't be asking." And then he was gone, swallowed by the night. Amy stood frozen, shaken, feeling the full weight of the threat settle around her. The ranch had never felt so exposed, and she knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The night swallowed Heartland in a way Amy had never felt before. Even the stars seemed dimmer, as if they, too, were afraid to shine. After the stranger's warning, Amy tried to keep herself calm, but her mind kept replaying his voice, the cold promise behind every word. She double-checked the barn doors, latched the gates, and left a lantern burning near the new horse's stall. But no matter how many precautions she took, a sense of danger hung heavy in the air. Around midnight, a sudden crash shattered the silence. Amy bolted upright from the couch, her heart pounding. She grabbed a flashlight and ran outside, a chill biting through her jacket. As soon as she reached the barn, she saw it, the side door forced open, its hinges twisted. As if someone had kicked it with all their strength, her stomach dropped. She rushed inside, the beam of her flashlight slicing through the darkness. Hay dust floated in the air, stirred by frantic movement. Then she heard it aloud, terrified whinny. The new horse, Amy sprinted toward its stall, but before she could reach it, she stopped dead in her tracks. A shadow moved. A tall figure stood beside the horse, pulling at the halter, trying to drag it out of the barn. The horse reared, kicking the wooden boards, desperate to break free. The man hissed in frustration and yanked harder. Even without seeing his face, Amy knew exactly who it was. The stranger had returned and he wasn't asking anymore. "Stop." Amy's voice cracked through the barn. The man turned sharply, anger blazing in his eyes. For a split second, they locked gazes. Amy felt the weight of his fury heavy, dangerous, unrestrained. "You should have stayed out of this," he growled, stepping toward her. Amy backed away. But the man moved fast, grabbing her arm. The flashlight slipped from her hand and clattered to the ground. The barn plunged into half-shadow. She twisted, fighting to break free, adrenaline surging through her. The stranger's grip tightened. Then, out of nowhere, the horse let out a piercing cry and slammed its shoulder into the stall door. The force shook the walls. The distraction was enough. Amy tore her arm loose and stumbled back. The horse reared again. This time the man ducked, losing his balance. Amy grabbed a metal rake, leaning against the wall, and held it between them like a barrier, breath shaking. "Get out," she said, stronger than she felt. For a moment, the stranger hesitated. His eyes flicked to the horse wild, defiant, no longer cowed by his presence. Something changed in his expression, a flicker of doubt or calculation. Then he stepped back, toward the open door. "This isn't over," he said, voice low and hateful. And with that, he vanished into the night. Amy locked the barn door with trembling hands. Only when she leaned her forehead against the cool wood did she realize how close she had come to something irreversible. The horse nudged her gently, as if apologizing for bringing danger to her doorstep. But Amy understood now. It wasn't the horse's fault. It was the past, chasing both of them. The sunrise brought no comfort. Its warm light touched the fields, but the ranch felt bruised, shaken by the night before. Amy barely slept, every small sound pulling her awake, her thoughts replaying the moment the stranger grabbed her arm. But fear wasn't the only thing pushing her now. There was anger too. Heartland was supposed to be safe. No one had the right to threaten the people she loved or the animals she protected. Jack noticed the tension in her shoulders as she walked toward the barn. "You shouldn't face this alone," he said, his voice firm but gentle. Amy nodded, grateful for the support, but deep down she knew the stranger wasn't the kind of man who backed down easily. He had come for the horse once. He would come again. Inside the barn, the new horse stood calmer than before, as if sensing the danger had passed, at least for the moment. Amy stroked its neck and whispered softly, "I'm not letting him hurt you again." The horse responded with a slow breath, leaning into her hand in a way that almost felt like trust being rebuilt. Piece by fragile piece. But the calm didn't last long. Footsteps crunched outside the heavy, purposeful kind she recognized from the night before. Jack reached for the shotgun he kept near the tack room, but a truck engine revved before either of them could move. Tires spun over gravel. Voices shouted. It wasn't just one man this time. Amy ran outside and saw a dark pickup speeding toward the road, dust billowing behind it. At the same moment, a police cruiser pulled into the driveway from the opposite direction, sirens silent, but lights flashing. The officers must have been responding to Jack's call earlier that morning. The pickup skidded sideways trying to escape, but the cruiser blocked its path. The stranger jumped out, his face tight with rage. "You don't understand," he shouted, pointing toward the barn. "That horse is mine." One of the officers stepped between him and Amy. "Sir, you're trespassing on private property. You need to step back." But the stranger wasn't listening. His eyes were wild, not with anger now, but with desperation. That shift unsettled Amy more than his threats had. Desperate men were unpredictable. "Why are you chasing this horse?" Amy asked, her voice steadier than she expected. The stranger finally looked at her, and something inside him cracked. "Because it's the last thing I had left," he said, "and someone took it from me." The truth cut deeper than she expected. This wasn't about ownership. It was about a life that had fallen apart when he was clawing to hold together. But hurting the horse, breaking into Heartland, threatening her, none of that could be excused. The police restrained him as he kept shouting, his voice fading as he was led to the cruiser. When the doors shut, the yard finally fell silent again. Amy stood still, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. The new horse watched her from the barn doorway, head lowered, as if waiting for her reaction. She walked over and pressed her forehead gently to its cheek. "You're safe now," she whispered. "We both are." But even as she said it, Amy sensed the story wasn't truly over. The stranger was gone, but the scars he left on the horse and on her would take time to heal. And Heartland, once again, had survived a storm that no one saw coming. The ranch fell into a strange kind of quiet. After the police car disappeared down the road, Heartland usually carried a sense of peace. But today, the silence felt heavier, like the ground itself was still remembering what happened. Amy stood alone in the yard, letting the breeze lift the loose strands of her hair. For the first time since the horse arrived, she finally allowed herself to breathe. The new horse grazed nearby, moving slowly but without fear. Every so often, it lifted its head to look at Amy, as if checking to make sure she was still there. That simple gesture warmed her heart. Trust wasn't something you earned in a single moment. It was built in small pieces, quietly over time. And today felt like the first piece finally fell into place. Inside the house, Lou tried to convince Amy to take a break, maybe rest for a while, but Amy shook her head. She wasn't tired. Not really. She was wired with questions that refused to quiet down. Why did the stranger cling so desperately to this horse? What had the animal gone through before reaching her hands? And why did the fear in its eyes feel like more than just a memory? Even after everything, Amy couldn't shake the sense that deeper secrets were buried beneath the surface. Later, as evening settled, She walked the fence line alone, checking every corner, every gate. The sun dipped low behind the hills, turning the fields gold. For a moment, the ranch looked untouched, pure like nothing dangerous had ever crossed its borders. But Amy knew better. Danger didn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it crept in quietly, hidden inside a herding animal or carried by someone desperate enough to risk everything at the far end of the property. She stopped and looked toward the tree line. Shadows stretched long across the ground, reaching toward her boots. The forest stood still, but something about it bothered her. As if the trees had watched everything unfold, and were waiting for what came next. Behind her, the new horse let out a soft, low nicker. Amy turned and smiled, walking back toward it. "Let's get you home," she whispered, brushing her hand along its neck. The horse leaned into her touch, calm and steady. But just as she led it toward the barn, she noticed something faint, almost invisible, tucked beneath the horse's mane. A small patch of skin, marked with the same jagged symbol she'd seen on the halter. This time carved deeper, older, permanent. Amy's breath caught. There was more to this horse's story. Much more.